Hello everyone, welcome to the Self-Taught Artist and welcome to the first oil painting video. So hopefully at this point you've seen the oil painting supplies. I will go over what we'll be using in this one specifically, but yeah, welcome to oil painting. As you can probably see in the title, this one is going to be about value, and as we progress through this, we are going to have many chapters on value where it kind of we just revisit this topic a lot because it is really important, but it's always going to have a little bit of its own twist to it. So this one is a little bit more on like value composition. We'll do some exercises that introduce this idea of value and how to use it. It's also on the power of value and just starting to get you guys to think in relation to how value can tell a story and how we can set it up and the impact that it truly has in our artwork. So we're not just doing value, we're going a little bit deeper than that with its concepts. And because obviously with drawing, we've already talked a little bit about it, but we're just gonna go a little bit deeper. And I have my book of all the notes that I need to share with you guys on this topic. So let's hop right in. For supplies, you're going to need your painting medium of choice, whether that's liquid or linseed. You're going to need your brushes. You're going to need your palette, your easel, something to paint on. For me, that's going to be my 9x12 linen paper, and we're going to break it up into sections. But if you have the canvas panel, or you can paint on anything at this point, it doesn't really matter. It will eventually, in the sense where you'll find kind of what you prefer to paint on, but I think to start, the most important thing right now is just to start and get a feel for things, and then down the line you'll kind of find your preferences for the surfaces that you'd like to paint on. And as for colors, you're gonna need black, white, and let's have burnt umber on the side, but we're not gonna jump straight into burnt umber yet. But those three colors and a pencil for an underdrawing if you feel like it. So for the lecture part, we're going to be talking about value. And value allows us to observe the rotation, shape, form of an object and its relationship to light. The study of value, which is black, white, and gray, is important because it's the study of tonal shapes and grouping these tones into shapes. Part of what we'll talk about and be working on is this ability to simplify first and really get these values into as few values as possible. And this ability to simplify is really what differentiates the amateurs from the experts. Think of these value patterns and groupings. Think of them as the compositional anchor for your art. The impact of your art is determined in these values and these value choices. For this exercise to work best and to kind of make some of the best decisions as far as value groupings, you want to let what you're painting not be the thing, but more so a series of unexpected shapes and images. So what you're looking at isn't a sphere. You're seeing different, depending on the way that the light is coming, you're seeing like a crescent or whatever. Like, it's even better if you don't really even put a word. I'm just trying to describe it for you visually, but essentially try not to think of what you're painting as the object itself. Start to train your mind to see shapes, not what you think you see, if that makes sense. Think of this as an opportunity to take what you think you see and replace it with what is actually there. And you'll find that with this mental switch, you kind of have a little bit of a renewed sense of wonder about the world, because all of a sudden you realize how little you actually understand about what you see, and what you think you see when you connect it to a word isn't actually the best way to break down a painting. And it's breaking it down into these big value groupings and shapes that result in a better painting. So historically speaking as well, you may be wondering why this is important or if old masters did this, and the answer is yes. So actually a lot of the old masters that we reference were also printmakers. And the art of printmaking is big blocks of shape and color being put down over one another, almost graphic-y to some extent. And this allowed them for a very seamless crossover into painting because they already had such a good understanding of value groupings and how little information can be, how much information can be condensed into one value while still portraying this sense of depth, dimension, and shape. Now, some tips to kind of just help you along the way. One of the tools at your disposal is squinting. So you'll see artists frequently kind of like squint their eyes, almost close, and this reduces the amount of information that's hitting our eyes so that we're able to kind of see things as a value instead of detail. This can be really beneficial when you're trying to deconstruct a difficult or detailed reference image in front of you. This is going to apply more so in future paintings, but I figured I would just kind of tell you now that, or one of the tools at your disposal that's also really helpful is that if you take, this works for both painting and your reference image, but you essentially take it and you turn it black and white. So in your reference image, if it's color, you can turn it black and white, and that will kind of help you, well, it'll just make you see the values instead of the color. Now, it's really important to kind of reference back and forth so that you train yourself like, oh, this grouping, you know, it can help you see that even though things are a different color, it may not be a different value. And that's what we're kind of trying to train ourselves through this. So you can take your colored reference image, turn it black and white, and kind of have a better understanding of values, which again goes back to teaching you the understanding of color a little bit better. You can also, once we get into colored paintings, if you want to check on your painting, you can take a picture of it, turn it black and white, and you will be able to see how it reads as a value study. And if it holds true and it reads correctly in black and white, then the colors you have and the value of those colors is working. So just a fun little tip and trick. And the cool thing about all of this and art is that it really is a lesson in noticing and appreciating. It teaches us to be more aware of what we're looking at, and I think that's really cool. Lastly, perfection is the enemy of good work. So from here on, just remember that oftentimes you need to take your best guess. Cover the canvas, then see how these values and colors relate to each other. We're not working in color yet, but essentially make the adjustments later. And yes, there are going to be times that it results in a terrible first draft of a painting. That's fine. I promise you, as someone who is also a perfectionist and needs to learn how to be better at that and risk creating bad art for the sake of learning, I am very guilty at fiddling with things before the whole canvas is covered. Now, sometimes that works because I have gotten so much better at understanding value and reading value and doing those things. But nevertheless, it is something that I am constantly trying to work on myself with. There's a lesson in committing to what you've done and what you think the first time, getting it all down, and then making the adjustments and learning from that. And at the same time, you know, especially in the past, there have been times where I fiddled too early with a painting, got to the end and, you know, the highlights and stuff, and all of a sudden I realized, oh wow, I did make those way too dark or not dark enough. And because I didn't have the light values in there, I didn't really have an accurate read of what was going on. So take this as a warning and a piece of advice. Let yourself be uncomfortable. Commit to what you've put down. Don't fiddle. Get everything covered. Then analyze how everything looks and relates to one another. Then make your adjustments. So we'll now get into our first grouping of exercises, and this time I'll kind of get everything set up with you guys so that you can see how I set things up, but I don't want to bore you with showing that every single time, so I'll just kind of assume that after this point, you'll know what to do. You have your supplies. Reference image is going to show up either here or here, depending on where it fits best in the screen. And as always, if you are on YouTube, then I'm going to give you some free follow along with me. However, we always continue this on to Patreon. So for every one lecture and, you know, 1 or 2 exercises that are here, there's probably 3 or 4 more on Patreon. So if you're really looking for that rapid growth, and if you enjoy just kind of being told what to paint and you don't want to worry about picking your own reference images and you want to kind of see me work through it with you, and that includes the good ones and some of the mistakes along the way, make sure to check that out. And my Patreon can be found in the description box below. There is a link there for you. I do hope to see you there. It's a really fun community. And again, if you are serious about improving in your artwork, then make sure to check that out. I give you so much more stuff to work from, and we go through so many more activities and exercises. Now then, let's hop right in. So the first part of this too is the understanding of how value tells a story. We're going to look at this first painting, and you can clearly see that there is this Z pattern that the artist has created through value. And this use of value, it directs your eye where to go through this painting and in what order he kind of wants you to venture through this painting. And so in other words, the artist here has used value in order to give us a map of what he wants us to see. In this second one, you have what's called kind of a center value scale, in that the values present are very much more centralized to one another, and it's a much closer grouping. And you'll note that in comparison to some of the others, this does have its own sense of mood and emotion kind of tied up with it. It makes you feel something different. It tells a different story based off of the groupings of values that he picked. And lastly, we have this dark centric painting, which, you know, there's maybe like one or two light values, but most of the values are in the dark. And there's kind of a balance and a weight to this. They do balance out with, you know, one or two really heavy light values, but a lot of nuances in the darks. And this tells a very different story and sense of emotion. It very clearly feels different when you look at it. And again, just coming back to the fact that all these value choices are intentional in order to convey what the artist is trying to tell, whatever story they're trying to tell. We're going to start these exercises with just black and white right now. And these monochromatic paintings are incredibly important in training our eye to understand value. This also will apply to all future paintings that we do in the form of an underpainting, which we will go in and kind of explain and describe. We'll go through our own examples of underpaintings later and in the future. For now, we're just working in black and white because it's very easy, and we're going to be focusing on teaching our eye to see and achieve value in our paintings. Now, the first part of this exercise is we are going to be taking the reference image and turning it into 3 or 4 value tones. And this is what we're going to do for a little bit. I mean, I kind of encourage you to do this for all paintings, but at some point we'll kind of skip over this. But essentially, this is a step that you can apply to not only this and not only beginner learning, but I'm not even kidding, for all paintings to come for the rest of your life, you can do this where you break it into 3 or 4 values and you break it down to that few of a number so that you really can see where the impact and some of the main changes and shapes are. Therefore, getting a better, a more accurate read on the impact that your painting will actually have. So this works for now, it works for beginners, but it also works for the entirety of your art career. You can do this before you start any painting. You can do it as a plan for a big painting, whatever it is. It's so important. And I have a link below to something that is on the Proco website, and shout out to them because they do such a good job on everything. But they have created this value recognizer, so you can put in your reference image, upload it there, and set how many values you want it to kind of interpret, and it will break the image into that number, which is super cool, super helpful. It's an invaluable resource, but at the same time, it's worth doing yourself. If you need help kind of understanding where the values are, I highly recommend it. At some point, you want to get to the point where you don't rely on that. You're able to kind of see these groupings yourself. But nevertheless, the link is there if you need it. We're going to start with our first painting, and we're going to break this reference image into 3 or 4 tones. Now, we are not going to be blending edges at the start of this. We want to keep this graphic. The edges are going to be hard. I'm going to try my best to keep edges hard. It's kind of hard for me to do it because to some extent it's quite instinctual, but I will try my best to not blend any edges. Do not blend any edges. The whole point of this is to be very graphic right now and very segmented. And later we will go into that. I promise. I promise that this is super helpful. This is a very helpful way to do this. Okay, to start off, I do have my piece of paper. I'm going to tape it onto my easel, depending on whatever easel you have. This is where you would take, if you have one of the standing ones, then you take the clipboard and you put the paper on the clipboard and rest it up there, or the pad of paper, you just kind of rest it over. Like, you flip it over so that you're painting on the hard surface. If you have canvas panel, you don't really need to worry about it. So that's your paper and or your canvas board, whatever you have. Then I have this, which I set up to be able to wipe my brushes. I fold it in half, and this just is a place that when I'm changing colors or wiping off extra painting medium, whatever, that lives right there. On that note, you will need your painting medium, so I'm using my linseed. Sometimes it's really hard to open. Oh my God. Why did I have to tighten it so much yesterday? Goodness gracious. Painting medium. Paper, let's put out some paints. And we're just gonna be using titanium white and black this time. The other thing is that we'll go back and forth between using, oh wow, I just put out so much titanium white. Don't do that. Put out enough, and the last thing we're gonna need is our brushes. And for that, I have my flat and my round. Alrighty, on my self-taught artist, let's get going. If you are, I don't know, if you're wanting to draw this first, feel free. I'll do a quick little one for you. I am going to segment this up a little bit just so that I don't know, I kind of just stay. In other words, I'm trying to not get crazy. Let's divide this into 3. You don't need to do this. I'm just doing this so that I, again, don't get like extreme. Okay, so if you're wanting to draw, then just take any of the pencils that you were using and you would, I'm not super interested in drawing this out. I kind of want to paint it, but you would essentially draw it. Like normal, you can get as detailed as you want, where you can just stay with kind of this contour drawing, or, oops, sorry, so I was focusing. So you can kind of stay with this contour like drawing where you don't really draw that much in, or you can go full detail if you're interested, in which case you would do what we were doing in the self-taught, well, in the drawing section, where, you would do this, then you would go in and kind of, you'd block in the shadows. And you'd get a more fully rendered drawing that way, and then you'd spray fixative, and then you'd go into what we are about to go into. So if you're interested in drawing first and kind of still continuing to build that skill set, then that's what I would recommend doing. Spend the time, do the drawing, get it as detailed as you want or as brief as you want, or basic. Spray it, let it sit for a little bit, and then you're ready to paint. So now, assuming that you're here and ready to go into the painting section, we have our white, our black, we have our painting medium, our brushes, and our paper to wipe stuff with. I'm actually going to start with my round, and part of that is because proportionally it just is actually a really good size for kind of what we're working with. And again, when we're looking at this, so either at this point you've put this image into Proco or you're going along with me. The whole point, I'm gonna write this down actually, and I'll paint over this. So the whole point of this is that we want to break this into 3 to 4 values. Wow, I spelled that wrong, right? So let's say that there's like one value there, and it's like there and there. Squinting, maybe our second value can be included in this and this, and then our third one is here and here. So I just marked, you know, the darkest is 1, and 1 will go here, here, and here. 2 will go here and here. 3 will go here and here. And now we have gotten it into our 3 values. Actually, we managed to get this in 3 values, so we're going to keep this as graphic as possible. So in the reference, you're going to see a lot more detail. We're not going for detail. We're not going for edges yet. We're literally just going for understanding the balance of these blacks, grays, and whites. And we're going to do 3. We're going to do a few of these in a row, where the next one we're going to add 2 more mid-tone values. Then we're going to work with 6 values and go from there. But this one, again, let's just go from there. So I want you to start, okay, the other thing, I know I'm out of focus right now, but this is an important announcement. I don't have 2 cameras, and I am so sorry for that, and my palette is down here, so I can't really, maybe what I'll do is I will look into getting a wood palette that I can kind of place up here next to it for you guys so that you can see, but right now I do not have another camera going, so you can't see my palette and my painting at the same time. I hope that because we're just working in black and white, that's okay for you, because I can basically just explain what we need. So let's start with black. My tip to value drawings is I never use black straight out of the tube. No matter how confident I am in that being the final value, I always tone it down with a little bit of white. Like so little, but it's not pure black. And there's a reason for this. It's kind of the same thing that we always would save our 4B pencil. It allows you to always just have room to grow and something to kind of work with if you do need to go darker. If you start with the darkest, you can never go darker than that. So I always kind of add a little bit of white so that we have room to play. It's less important right now, but a habit to build off of nevertheless, and you'll see as we kind of continue why it does get more important. But so we have our black with a little bit of titanium white in it, and this is going to be our value 1. And we're going to put it in where it needs to go. Again, not worrying about edges. We're really, really just trying to keep this very graphic-y. This is partially for you to understand and start to just get a feel for what oil paint feels like, on top of just continuing to practice our artistic skills. You know, this kind of goes a little bit past here. Through all of this, You know, now that we're working in paint, we're working more than just one skill set right now. There's a lot more going on than just pencils. There's different feedback that you're getting from the feeling of paint and brush. It doesn't feel like pencils anymore. You know, it uses a little bit of a different part of our brain. And that's why these are really important. So we try to keep this learning period as basic as possible because there's so many new things to kind of learn and interpret and work with. It can kind of feel a little bit overwhelming, but very exciting nevertheless. Again, not worrying about edges entirely in the sense where I'm not worried about softening edges. We're just getting our values in there. My shadows may be encroaching a little bit on this next one. Sorry. I don't follow my own rules. That's why I'm an artist. Okay, so I also see a value 1 is maybe a little bit in here. And again, just make your best guess. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect. We're training a different part of our brain now. So just do the best you can at guessing, or just, yeah, make the best guess you can as to where these fall and where they go. And then you will learn from it for next time. And we're gonna repeat this a few times. So be bold, be brave. And there's something else I was gonna tell you. You also have maybe heard the fat over lean rule when it comes to oil painting, and it is kind of a method in which how we mix, sorry, I'm gonna be out of focus for a little bit. It's a method in how we mix our paint in our medium and layer in oil paint. It is very important to understand this. We will get into it. Right now, it's more important that we just get to painting and understanding the feeling, and again, just getting this feedback of what paint to paper feels like, what color mixing feels like, all these things. There's so much going on right now. Don't worry about it. Is it an important rule to oil painting? Yes, but we're just practicing. So does this need to be archival for 500 years? No, it doesn't. So don't worry about it. If you've heard about it, if you know about it already, great, you're ahead of the game. If you haven't, don't worry about it yet. Don't even look up a video about it yet. Don't worry about it. We will get there. I will explain it all to you. But for now, we're just having fun and getting into it and enjoying the process. So now I'm mixing my 2 value, which is going to be mostly, it's a little bit more of a 50-50 mix of titanium white and black, maybe with a little bit more emphasis of black than titanium white. And you'll see in the reference that there are many more transitions in all of this, but we don't care right now. Again, we're keeping it graphic. Well, also as this course goes on, you know, I'm gonna teach you layering, I'm gonna teach you blending, I'm gonna teach you all of the things, I promise. We're gonna go through everything and it's gonna be so much fun. But we want this to look graphic because that's going to help us understand our decisions better. We'll get a better read on our ability to identify values. We'll get a better read on how accurate our color or value mixing was. It seems basic. The answer is yes. Okay, I kind of went into this a little bit, so I'm just gonna clean up this edge. If you feel like, if you go into any direction a little bit more than you maybe intentionally wanted to, you can just take, it's easier to go, how do I say this? So if I was working with the level 2 value, if I encroached on the level 1 value, the darker value, it's easier to correct that than it is the other way around. So I'm just taking this dark value and reestablishing that hard edge because I kind of was a little sloppy about it, but that's how you solve that problem. Same thing, you know, if I feel like I went a little bit high with this, I would just take the dark value and put it kind of back in here. Oh no, I'm starting to blend. Okay, I promised I wouldn't blend. So, no blendy. No blendy, Ashley. There's that, right? Great. Now, we're going to take our 3 value, which is going to be our lightest value. And if you guessed, yes, I don't ever work with entirely pure titanium white either. I always just mix a little bit of black into it. And the good thing is that when you work from dark to light, you already have a little bit of that dark in your brush. So you don't really need to add more. Your brush is already a little bit tainted with a darker color. So it's not going to be pure white, and that's great because we don't want that. And then you just kind of work up to this line. This is where our drawing skills also come in handy because, you know, depending on how well this first pass went for you, your lines might be a little bit sloppy, maybe like touch some of the other edges that were there, you know, you'll see. It all encroaches on itself a little, or like here. That's, I kind of ruined that edge a little bit, but we can go in and fix it. Minorly, also not the most important thing, but here is our 1 value that is a little bit dirty. It's a little bit of a dirty white. Also, I'm not working with a new brush. This one is super frayed and old. So it is just gonna be a messy brush anyways. Yours, if you just got a new brush, is gonna be nice and tight and be able to make better lines than mine is. But sometimes a good old frayed and messy brush is fun to work with. With this too, because it is graphic-y, I am just being really bold with my brush strokes, right? I'm going in, like, I'm doing long sweeps of shape. So we have everything kind of covered in. Now you can kind of go in and adjust any minor changes. So I'm taking this 2 value and just tightening up that edge. Again, it's easier to tighten things up with kind of the darker of the colors. Maybe a little bit of help on that edge. I'm gonna take the 2 and push this back, push this black back a little bit. Okay, and maybe bring this, you know, back to our drawing where this angle is really important. This shadow angle is really important in telling us what the underlying structure is. And so I'm just gonna go up a little bit higher so that we like really get a read on that being a sphere. So you can adjust your edges that way, but what I don't want you to do is go in and mess with your edges and create like softer edges. We're not going for that yet. I can see maybe going down a little bit here. But anyways, I think that's I think I shouldn't say that. This is pretty good. That's a good start. Hopefully you can see that. It's very graphic-y. We have our 1, 2, 3 tones. Now, if you wanted to do a 4th tone on this one, for example, I would maybe pick more of a pure white and I would just, you know, you'd put it somewhere like right in there. So again, when there's you know, 3 values here. Does it look entirely realistic? No, but we'll get realism. We just need to get going now and get some of these basics in the way. So let's try this again. And what we're gonna do this time is add 2 more values. So we're gonna add a mid-tone value, and what that means is that where we have the 1, 2, 3 here, we're gonna add 2 that fall in between this 1 and this 2. And that's usually typically gonna go kind of right in here and right in here. It'll just show up in other places, but you'll see just by adding 2 more values, the kind of the power of this. So when you mix your paints this time, let's keep each section separate. So we'll have one pile that is our 3, we'll have one pile that's our 2, and we'll have one pile that's our 1. And those are kind of like pre-mixed, and then we'll be able to see, you know, the other 2 that we're adding. So let's draw with our 2 value. You can draw this again. You can draw these all with pencil first, but be careful because this is going to be wet. I'm going to draw it with the 2 value. And you'll see when you draw with paint, it's a lot rougher, but it doesn't really matter because it's paint. So let's start with our 3 value. Sorry, I'm getting confused. This is our 1. And now we're gonna have 5 values. Our 1 is still gonna be the darkest. So we can start by putting that in. So when I'm mixing paint off camera, I'm also kind of creating the consistency that I want with my painting medium. And that's where it's gonna come down a little bit to the feel of what you want. So mix regardless of rules. Again, I will explain all the rules as we kind of get further into this course. But for now, don't worry about it. If you like it runny, make it runny. If you like working with thicker paint, use thicker paint. I have kind of a mixture of both. I do really like the feeling of paint that flows, but you can't get too carried away with that because of the fat over lean rule and the effect that some of the painting mediums can have on the paint long term. But again, I don't want you to worry about that. Right now, just kind of pick what feels good so that we can keep moving. So this is still my 1 value, which is the darkest. Okay, I should probably look at my reference image, not just make this up. Our 3 value, oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep saying 3. I'm so sorry. Our 1, our darkest value, basically doesn't really change all that much. That's still kind of the same. It's the same areas that get that. Okay, I made a mistake a little bit in that this is a little bit wide, so I'll fix that as we progress, but if you don't make the same mistake that I did, if you're following along exactly, I went too far out right here, but that's our 3. Let's put in our 2. Feel free to get as bold or as scratchy kind of as you want. So if you like these big strokes like what I'm doing, covering a lot with a little, great. If you need to work a little bit smaller than that, that's also fine. Just kind of do what feels good and what feels natural right now. Wow, that is not different enough. Okay, so this is a good example. Maybe because I was moving a little bit faster, but for whatever reason, this value either isn't dark enough or my my 2 value is too dark and I needed to lighten it up. But you can see like those look, it still looks really similar. Okay, I'm gonna add just a touch more white to my 2. And we'll see, but this looks, it just looks really similar. We don't want it to look too similar because it's not the same value. So that's where I kind of committed, but instantly read that there wasn't enough change, which means something is wrong with that value mix that I did. And this is where value is important because you can read the relationships. It's just a play on how everything relates to one another. And by the way, every time I'm like going over here too, I'm wiping my brush off on my paper. If I'm changing the color, I'm going back to my dark value, reestablishing that edge a little bit. It got a little, just got a little lazy with it. So let's do our halftones now before we put in our lights. So we're gonna take that 2, that was our in-between, and you're just gonna add a touch more white to it. The best way you'll be able to see if this works is that one of the places that this other value is gonna go is right here. And you can see immediately that reads as lighter. And that's what we want. The other place that that's gonna go is kind of like right in here. And right there. I'm actually just gonna go in with that brighter value that we had and fill this in so that you can see how this all relates to one another. Lighter value is all in here. A little bit right there. Again, I messed up this edge, remember? So I'm gonna kind of do a little bit of damage control. You don't have many opportunities to go in and fix because then you'll start to muddy your colors a little bit. So you can only make so many adjustments, which is why it's worth putting something down and leaving it. But, okay. So now it's, you know, a bit more graphic-y. I haven't gone in. None of these edges are super tight. I'm just gonna see where I want that other value to be added. But you can really start to see, hopefully, that just having that extra, these extra additions, sorry, that's really chunky. The effect that that had on the shape of everything. Okay. Don't copy me. I'm just fussing to try to kind of like show you, but. Okay. Well, I'm actually, let me just tighten that up a little bit. That 2 value, and mix it a little bit in here. And just get a little bit more dimension in our shadow. I actually also don't like how stark that is. But it needs to be there, because taking it away definitely just made that. This is hard. I'm used to blending my edges. This is good for me. Okay, again, don't follow me right now. I'm trying to get back to where it was. so that it probably looks more like yours. Okay, so now we have our 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna add one more value. This little sliver right here, that was our in-betweeny. Let's move that a little bit higher up. And then we're gonna put one in between there too. So it's kind of like, it's mostly dark, a little bit of titanium white, but a little bit lighter than what's down there. Fill in that gap because that edge is driving me nuts. Whoops, hold on, hold on. Doing a little bit of damage control, went a little bit high. It's been a long time since I've done these. As you can tell, I'm used to fussing with stuff. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna leave that just for conversation's sake, or like sanity's sake. It's supposed to be graphic-y, but no. One more adjustment. I'm sorry. I don't like how high up that actually ended up going. I feel like it reads as well. The issue is that the more that I touch this, the more that I blend things together, and then that kind of defeats the purpose of keeping it graphic-y, but it also gives us more values because every time I touch it and blur it, I'm creating more halftones, which isn't true to the exercise. So I need to get better. Next time, when we go in this next time, I'll be bolder, but sorry, that edge is bothering me. It's like glaring. Okay. I'm sitting back, I'm squinting, I'm looking at any adjustments that need to be adjusted. I should have left it. Let that be a lesson to you. Don't overfuss. Sometimes leaving things is better. It's just that. Right there bothers me a little bit. Anyways, okay. Anyways, this next time we're gonna basically be able to go in and fully kind of do a little bit more blending. So let me adjust you so that you're a little bit closer. And let's try this again. So we're dark value, and then a few kind of mid-tone values, and we'll go from there. I'm gonna use one of the mid-tones, and we'll use that to draw. Ooh, that's dark, too dark. One of the tricks, oh, that's way far over. Wow, I am all over the place today. I'm so sorry. One of the tricks that people do, so instead of having to mix every single halftone value, you can put two values next to each other and blend, and like you kind of smoosh them into each other, and that can create a halftone value. And essentially, the more halftones you have in, the more turn you get in an object. So very rough and ready, right? Sloppy, but that's kind of just the nature of paint too. Let's go in with that darker one. I like to work dark from light. We'll practice doing it many different ways, but I find that that tends to be the easiest way to keep colors from mixing, because depending on how this has gone for you, and if you followed it along with any of my fiddling in this one, if you were trying to keep up with my fiddling, then you learned very quickly that things can become muddied very fast. That's also why we're doing these exercises. I'm saying this out loud for myself too. that I just need to put down graphic paint. Graphic shapes. Put it down and commit. So that's what I'm going to try to do with this one. Let's just be bolder. Dark values, again, kind of they're staying in the same place. It's going to be our main shadow. Both our form and a little bit of our form and our cast shadow. I'm being really bad and I'm not checking my reference enough, my reference image. I'm not really looking at it because I think I know what it's doing, but that's not a good habit to get into. Let's put a value in that's one step lighter than that. So this was our 2. And to keep this more graphic-like, I'm gonna actually segment this out. So that kind of goes there. There's a little bit of this value in here. And there's a little bit of it actually in this cast shadow. Now let's add even a little bit more white. And we're gonna put another one right here, another block of color. That same one, we're gonna do right here. Whoops, that wasn't a clean line. I also went a little bit far, a little high up. So I'm gonna bring that down. Button up that line. The one thing I've noticed so far is that, well, because that was messy, I just need to go in and put a little bit more of the dark in there. We're gonna go even, so quite a bit lighter. Do a more significant jump up into the lights, but not all the way. Because there's actually a difference between this light and this light and this. This is gonna be the brightest. This is a little bit less. So let's start with putting that here. If you want, you can add a little bit more white to that mixture. And that'll function as this value. It's funny, you can kind of see how close this value stayed throughout the whole painting process. All 3 attempts. And then I'm gonna keep this color and I'm gonna do a little bit of a pass right here. I'm gonna add a touch more white, put another block right around here. And then let's go for almost a pure white. Basically as punchy of a white as you can get with a dirty brush. And put that right there. The only thing I see right now, okay, this, I'm gonna take a little bit of that paint, push it into that shadow because that was a little bit of a sloppy edge. Same with this one. I'm gonna take some of this paint, kind of push that into there because it got the line of it, I don't know, it was just a little funky. So I'm just cleaning up the only other thing I see is that this black kind of needs to come. I'm getting really picky now, but it's like a little bit And actually, let's take one of those like lighter ones, not the brightest light, and let's just add a little bit right in here. So in this one, you can already see how many more value, like when we have more values, how much more turn that has. We have room to grow in the sense where, you know, this is from here. I'm just giving you some advanced kind of tips now. You could soften this edge and blend that and create more of a half tone transition there, which will give even more shape. You can create more, you can blend these edges, make it more seamless so that it, you know, that softens and takes less attention. You can soften these lines, just like what we were doing with our drawings. You can soften some of these more distant edges to make it, you know, apparent that the light, it's moving further away from the light. This one, I think we got a cleaner 3 value, so that's punchier, and I like that. This one got a little bit muddy. We could have gone a little bit brighter with that. And you know, this one, our white is quite clean. It's just graphic-y, which I'm not necessarily used to. That's kind of a good example of this transition, but I wanted to be more graphic so that I could literally show you the transitions. But hopefully through all of these, you can see that there is, as we added more values, there's quite a bit more chance for depth and dimension. And with all of this, that is our first painting exercise, and it's so cool. This is actually really good for me to go back and do some of these because I've definitely gotten into the habit of how I paint, and it never hurts to go back to the basics. So I was gonna write it underneath, but basically we have, you know, the 3 tones, 5 tones, and more like 6+ tones. There's definitely more shape and dimension. Granted, you have to take into account that I fussed with this one, so I did touch more of the edges, and in some instances gave it more halftones than just the 5 I was allowed, which was my fault. I got blendy and fussy, but I got better at it on this one, where I kept the edges sharper. So between the two, I would say that these ones are my favorite. This one just got away from me a little bit. Sorry. But I mean, especially if we look between the 3 values and the 6+, there's way more shape that you can get. And we're gonna repeat this exercise multiple times and with different kind of shapes as well, so that we can really get a sense of how light and value interacts with geometric shapes, because then you can turn any complex painting into geometric shapes and break it down that way, and then you get a deeper understanding of everything that's going on in a complex painting. So this is very important and very good basics that we utilize all the way throughout our painting careers. If you're on YouTube, this is going to be where our journey ends for this lecture. We do continue on Patreon, where we're gonna have, I don't know, I wouldn't even be surprised if we finish this paper on Patreon and kind of keep doing different exercises and different shapes. But I can't wait to see you in future videos where we continue on with our painting practice and these black and white kind of monochromatic styled paintings. The only thing, again, like I kind of mentioned in the supply video, was that in upcoming ones, we are going to add in burnt umber. So just make sure you have black, white, and burnt umber to use. And maybe, no, you have the towels. So just those, just adding the burnt umber, make sure you have that for future videos. But again, more exercises on Patreon. We're gonna continue the same concept there. A bonus exercise that I'm not gonna show you or go through with you would be to create a value scale. So just like what we did with our drawing exercises, where we went from 1 to 9, you're gonna do the same thing, but with paint, and just incrementally, you know the drill. If you went through the drawing course, you know how to do it, but basically just create your own square, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 little blocks of the values 1 through 9. That'll give you a really good understanding of how much white or black is needed for each mixture and how to really create those seamless transitions between all those different values. So that's bonus. Not gonna go through it with you, but it's an exercise if you want something else. If not, I will see you in the next Self-Taught Artist video or on Patreon. Either way, thank you so much for joining, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.